Hey, Larken Rose, this video is going to make some people uncomfortable. It's going to make some voluntarists uncomfortable. It's going to make some statists uncomfortable. Too bad. It's about moral principles that has to be discussed, and it's about kind of the most serious topic there is, which is killing human beings. I have said on many occasions that I absolutely believe in the right of people to be armed and to retain the ability to use deadly force. One way I describe it is the reason I own guns, I'm not a hunter, some people are, that's fine. The reason I own guns is so I have the ability to kill human beings. And of course, by itself, that sounds like, do you run around killing human beings? No. There are very few situations in which I would kill a human being, but I want that ability, because if one of those situations comes up, it means that something really, really bad is happening, so bad that I think that killing somebody is morally superior than not killing them. Like if they're going on some murderous rampage or something, or, attacking an innocent person, and I don't see any other way to stop them. And the mentality of people who take on that responsibility is pretty different from the people who don't. And I think there are a lot of people who want to imagine that they don't ever have to think about, much less act on, the idea of having to use deadly force justifiably in defense of the innocent. They just hope the world will be such that they don't ever have to do that. And, I hope that for them, too. I hope that for me, too. But I don't throw away guns in the hope that I wouldn't have to do something unpleasant to stop something more unpleasant. I accept the responsibility, like huge numbers of gun owners, in the U.S. in particular, who accept the responsibility of, we're the grown-ups. If something really bad is happening and I'm the one who's there and I'm the one armed, it may be up to me to decide I have to take a human life, and that would suck. And if I do it and it's completely justifiable, it would still suck. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be laughing and jumping up and down. Yeah, I totally killed him. It would suck to take a human life mostly because of the potential of what that life could have been if the person didn't choose to become a violent psycho or whatever, or something else made him be a violent psycho. So I think good people who value human life are hesitant to use violence, even justifiable, or I should say defensive force, because violence sort of implies it isn't justified. But there are people who hesitate to use it, and unfortunately often the good people hesitate too long, and they wait too long because they really, really, really want to make sure that they only do if it's completely necessary. And sometimes they wait too long and innocent people suffer because they waited too long. But I would rather have good people sort of default in that direction than just be trigger-happy psychos who take it lightly and just kill somebody because, I don't know, he sort of looked at me weird, so I shot him. Well, then you're a psycho and a danger yourself. But there's an aspect to this that even a bunch of people in the freedom movement don't seem to understand. So there's the assassination attempt on Trump. I'm assuming that's what, I don't know what factually happened, but let's assume that that's what happened, regardless of who's behind it or any of that somebody tried to kill him. And some people are joking about it and going, rah, rah, rah. The main reason I'm not is other people died. We'll get to Trump in a minute. But to claim that the people behind him, the one person who apparently died and two more who got hit and critically injured, to claim that they deserved it for being at a rally, I don't think anybody's claiming that. They didn't, and it was horrible. And if for no other reason, I would absolutely condemn what the shooter did, regardless of if he did it on his own or working for somebody else, because at the very least, he was endangering innocent people. And in this case, it sounds like he killed somebody and injured two more. So that aspect of it is indisputably irresponsible and immoral. But when it comes to the idea of somebody wanting to knock off the president, I see arguments, people arguing on both sides, and both of them are missing a gigantic moral component, including a bunch of people on the pro-freedom side. And I see a bunch of people going, well, we're civilized, like voluntarists are civilized. We can't be okay with trying to shoot somebody. Sometimes, yes, we can. Now, whether you think that applies in this situation or not, okay, I'm not going to try to decide that for you. But here's my first test of whether somebody who says that is being at all moral. If we were talking about Jeffrey Dahmer back when he was alive, and he's killing and eating his neighbors, and let's say we know that and he's running around, and somebody said, well, I'm going to shoot him. He's a dangerous psycho, and somebody shot him and killed him. Most people in and outside the freedom movement would go, it's kind of sad that was necessary, but yes, that was necessary. Okay, fine. We won't get mad at the person who killed the serial killer cannibal because you took out somebody who had done evil things and would probably keep doing evil things. So, okay. That's just, most of the world would say that would be justified. So my question to pro-freedom people who are like, I certainly wouldn't celebrate this, is that because the murder that Trump and Biden and everybody in Congress is part of is done through the legal process and is called national security, so that when they blow up little brown children on the other side of the world, we don't really care enough about them to actually say that, yeah, you're a murderer. Yeah, Trump increased the droning and bombing, and it killed more civilians than had even happened from his predecessors, which were really damn bad too. So does that just not matter because it was done by way of the military? It doesn't count as murder if you call it national security or public policy or national defense or all the other euphemisms you can give to things where Trump, and this is true of Biden, it's true of every president going back forever, gave the order for specific drone events that killed specific innocent people. Now, you don't know their names because the left and the right both kiss the ass of the warmongers, and their media isn't about to go, here's this person who died from the warmongering bullshit that we support. Here's this other person who died. No, you'll see a list of numbers. Oh, there were 87 civilian casualties. The weather for tomorrow. Wow. So 87 innocent people got murdered, and it's just a brief mention in a news story. Is that any less evil than if 87 people had been, like, individually one at a time murdered by some serial killer? Is there somehow a better way to get murdered? Well, that was done within, like, military action, so you shouldn't mind getting murdered. So my next question for pro-freedom people is, imagine you're somebody on the other side of the world and one of the drone strikes specifically personally authorized by Trump murdered your family and killed your children. And imagine that person says, I can't let this stand, and he goes to all the trouble to assassinate Trump. I could say the same thing about Biden or anybody else. It has nothing to do with the individual. Like the guy at the top of the war machine, you gave the order and it killed my kids, I'm going to hunt you down. Now, I'm not even asking if you would do that or if you would approve. But if they did that and hunted down the guy who gave the order that killed their children, would you say that that guy for doing it is just as bad as a murderer? Like, he hunted down somebody who murdered his children. Are you going to pretend that, well, we can't? We as libertarians or voluntarists or whatever you want to call it, we can't pretend that it's at all okay to use violence against murderers if they work for the state, because then we have to somehow pretend it's different. Well, their murder was legal, and it was an official policy, and it was a military action, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, if you're desperately trying to cling to your hypocrisy, let's turn it around. Now a bomb lands in your stinking house in the U.S. and kills your children. because the leader of some other warmongering psychos on the other side of the world, Russia, China, whatever, decided, well, we're going to overthrow the imperialist U.S., which, by the way, the ruling class of the U.S. totally is. And, well, sorry about your kids dying, but that's just collateral damage. If somebody then took a shot at whatever leader of the country just murdered your children, would you go, well, come on. We can't talk as if violence is okay. No, because that murder of my kids was done by a political leader, not just some individual psycho. Why the hell would that matter? It doesn't. Morally, it makes no stinking difference. So I very much feel for the people and the families of people who haven't been directly involved in warmongering murder, who were at a rally and then getting shot at or hit or killed. Yeah, that's very not okay. But when you talk about, somebody tried to kill the president, I don't even care which one. Trump, Biden, go back down the list of warmongers. No, I'm not nearly as upset as I would be if they took a pot shot at somebody who was famous for playing music or being an actor or something other than wielding political power that gets people killed. And it isn't just the warmongering. Imagine if you're a family member of some person who's like, decent person, never threatened anybody, never harmed anybody, and now he's in a cage because Trump unilaterally said, we're going to outlaw these bump stocks. Now, I don't know if they even got around to prosecuting anybody for that before the courts threw it out as unconstitutional, because it was. But if you have a family member in a cage for the next 10 years because of a stroke of a pen from that power-happy piece of crap, Donald Trump, and you're mad at him, are you justified? Yeah. Would that justify knocking him off? Maybe not. But don't pretend he's an innocent person. He's not. He basically threatened to cage several 100,000 Americans on his own, unilaterally, by himself, for nonviolent actions. He is an aggressor. He is an immoral aggressor. And that's not even counting the warmongering. There's a zillion different examples you can point to of things he advocated, including red flag laws, which is take the guns first, go through due process second. If that had happened to a friend of mine, somebody said you're a danger, so the SWAT team kicked down your door, dragged you away, or just shot you because you resisted. Well, gee, what did that come from? That guy passing that law. And that, like, Trump didn't have to pass it, but that's what he was pushing for. If he had gotten that, and that had happened, and somebody died as a result of that, you think he's innocent? Oh, well, we can't talk about, like, using violence. If you can't talk about it and you can't think about it, you're still under the spell of statism. Like, if anybody else said, I'm going to hire that person to kick down your, friend's door and drag him away and put him in a cage, when he didn't do anything, I'm not even alleging he did anything, but I'm going to cage him because I decided to. And if he decides to defend himself and shoot the people doing that, are you going to go, how could my friend have stooped so low as to use violence against completely immoral aggressors? That isn't stooping low. That is literally essential to the concept of self-ownership and self-preservation and self-defense. That is fundamental to libertarianism. If you own yourself, you have the right to defend yourself. If you don't have the right to defend yourself, it means you don't own yourself. It means it's okay for other people to rob you and dominate you and enslave you and cage you and kill you and whatever else. But there's some people who want to pretend that, well, if we're civilized, we're not even going to have that discussion. Like I said, you can nitpick over, like, what level of responsibility different people have. Like, here's this member of Congress who voted for that bill to fund this war endeavor that killed a bunch of innocent people. Well, how directly do you want to blame him in particular? Like, he helped make it happen, But are you going to say, well, he was removed enough that I wouldn't blame him enough that I think it's justified to kill him? Like, you can decide those lines and have a discussion about it. But if you're unable to discuss the idea of defensive force against aggressors when they work for the state, then you're still unprincipled. You're still letting the mythology of government warp your sense of right and wrong and what's justified and unjustified. There are a lot of people alive in the world today whose family members are dead as a direct result of Donald Trump saying, do that drone strike, I approve that one, I approve that one. They're dead. They're not coming back. They were innocent people and they're dead because of Donald Trump. So when people express, oh, this is so horrible. No, not compared to a lot of things that Trump and every other president and almost everybody in Congress does on a regular basis. Again, you can debate how direct their participation has to be before they all the way deserve blame or before, force is justified against them. That's a different discussion. You can have that discussion. Like, I still have that discussion with people. But to pretend that, oh, this is just an exchange of ideas, this is just a difference of opinion, we can't get violent over difference of opinion. Well, no, we can't. This isn't just difference of opinion. That guy was directly involved in things that murdered a bunch of innocent people. Trump was directly involved in things that murdered innocent people. So was Biden and Bush and Obama and Clinton, and all of them going all the way back because they all play the warmongering game. Now, if you want to argue, well, I don't think his participation justifies this level. Okay. Like I said, you can have that discussion and debate and whatever. But if you pretend that the people who are at the top of this violence machine should somehow be immune to the morality of defensive force used after the fact against somebody who's literally participated in murder, and you pretend you're principled, and you pretend you believe in self-defense, and yet you kind of sort of warp it because you don't want part of the uncomfortable discussion of, what about when the aggressor has a badge or was elected to office? A zillion years ago, I made that video called When Should You Shoot a Cop? And the title alone made a bunch of people freak out. It was sort of funny because a bunch of people freaked out at the title and then watched it and afterwards said, yeah, you're kind of right. Like, at some point, there has to be some line at which if law enforcers go beyond that, yeah, people have to defend themselves by brute force. I mean, that's what the American Revolution was, is saying, yeah, redcoats, we're not playing anymore. You're not going to disarm us. The Battle of Lexington, shot heard around the world, was literally the colonists and their militia saying, you're not going to come steal our guns. And the redcoats saying, lay down your guns, we're here to steal the militia's firearms. And then a revolution happened. So if you're outraged at the idea of shooting a cop, you have to be outraged at the idea of the American Revolution, because that was a bunch of colonists shooting the cops when they came to disarm them. Now again, you can debate where that line should be and when people have the right to resort to defensive force and deadly force, because that's a very serious discussion and it's an important discussion. But if you're incapable of having that because you don't want to have to think about the responsibility of those lines of at what point is it justified, including for you, at what point do you need to take up arms against an aggressor? You can't just get out of that discussion by hoping that won't happen and by just pretending there's no such thing as evil in the world and then condemning people who try to defend themselves. And I see that so much. It isn't just in the freedom movement, but it's also in the freedom movement. Like, there's lots of gun owners and conservative people and constitutionalists who are like, well, you can't resort to shooting the cops. Okay, so you don't believe in gun rights. You believe in begging and begging and begging, and if they show up to steal your guns, cooperating. That's the opposite of believing in the right to keep and bear arms. The point of the right to keep and bear arms is to defend against tyranny. Like, the authors of the Second Amendment were very clear about that. So if your attitude is, we have the right, but if the police come to take them away, well, you can't shoot the cops, then you do not believe in the right of self-defense. And you do not believe in the right to keep and bear arms. That's just a truism. If you think you're obligated to disarm if the political parasites say so, then you don't think you have the right to be armed. The concept of a right is this is moral and justified no matter what a ruling class says about it. And I know the conversation is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for a lot of people, including people in the freedom movement. But we can't just pretend that this is just about a discussion of ideas when on a regular basis, Americans who pay their taxes are paying for the U.S. military to murder innocent people on the other side of the world. And they're paying for the federal parasites and the state parasites and local parasites to initiate violence against lots and lots and lots of people who haven't threatened or harmed anybody. They've, like a bunch of them, well, you disobeyed some arbitrary bullshit law against some victimless crime. And when the SWAT team showed up to drag you away and put you in a cage for possessing the wrong plant, you defended yourself. Whoa, I can't condone that. I can. Might not advise it because it probably won't go well for you. You'll probably just die in a hail of gunfire, so maybe don't choose that. But if you're so uncomfortable with the idea of defensive force against aggressors when the aggressors work for a ruling class, that you pretend that the civilized thing is to never discuss that, you have no principles. I don't know another way to say it. If you think that official aggressors should always be immune from defensive force or retaliatory force if they've been committing murder, then you don't have moral principles. You're still making a giant exception for agents of the state and rulers and parasites and lawmakers and all that, so that they can do whatever the hell they want and kill innocent people, and you're still going to go, whoa, 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 let's not talk about violence. And the weirdest thing to me is how many people do that while going rah, rah, rah on July 4th. That was literally anti-state deadly force used against cops in a direct rebellion against their legal government, the British Crown. And the idea that you can go rah, rah, rah for that, but if somebody says, there's got to be some point at which we're not obligated to go, like if they go door-to-door gun confiscation, then are you going to condemn anybody who says, okay, now it's probably time to shoot cops? We can't have that discussion. If you can't have that discussion, it's because you've been brainwashed and indoctrinated to the point that your brain can't let you consider actually resisting your own abuser and oppressor as long as they're labeled authority and government and law enforcers and lawmakers. You can resist each other, you can resist private thugs, but if you talk about using force against official mass murderers and thugs and aggressors who do their violence by way of law and national security and whatever other euphemisms they want to hide it under, morality wouldn't change. So if somebody took pot shots at Jeffrey Dahmer, well, he was still alive, he's dead now, would you have any different response to somebody taking pot shots at Donald Trump? Guess who killed more people, more innocent people? Jeffrey Dahmer or Donald Trump? See if you can explain in a comment below why your response would be different for somebody who was personally involved with making decisions that resulted in actions that killed a bunch of innocent people, if it was done officially as opposed to done on their own. Why would you make a distinction? Why would you pretend that we can't talk about that, we can't even think about that in the context of these mass murderers and these thugs and these aggressors and these abusers and victimizers? Because their authority, morality applies differently. If you think morality applies differently to somebody because of their office, then you are still under the spell and delusion of statism.